Does Ebere as a complete Arsenal? This is such an exciting signing, but is it enough to get us over the line, finally get us to a Premier League or Champions League title, or both? We can dream. We're going to talk about it. Before we do, if I could just ask you to subscribe. We're on the way now to 24,000 subscribers, and if you could like the video, I would be massively grateful. But look, first of all, we're going to talk about why have we brought him in? And I think there's a bit of a misunderstanding as to why we've brought him in because of the timing of it and how it kind of linked to Kai Havertz. I think we were always going to make this deal. I think we were always in the room for him. And the way it transpired may have been pushed along by the injury to Kai Havertz, but I don't think it was because of it. And if you think about, the way that Crystal Palace were delaying with Spurs to the point where they said, oh, well, we want him to play on Thursday night, so delay. I think they knew Arsenal were coming back. If we were never coming back, I don't think they'd have delayed it. And there have been reports saying that Spurs firmly believe now that they were kind of being towed along whilst Palace waited. And more importantly, Eze waited for Arsenal to come back in. But also, I think if this was a direct response to the Kai Havertz injury, you'd be expecting Kai Havertz to therefore be out for most of the season. And it doesn't seem like that is the case. This came out from Bild in Germany this morning, of course, with the international break coming up. Havertz has problems with cartilage and loose bodies in his knee. Havertz will now undergo 2 weeks of conservative therapy and injections. However, if this is not successful, surgery on the knee will be unavoidable. But in terms of how long that could keep him out, this came from Physio Scout, an excellent account on Twitter. They said the current expectation is that Havertz will attempt to manage the problem through rehab and load adjustment with the aim of it settling within 2 to 3 weeks. So that would have him back after the first September international break. If he needed surgery, if an operation becomes necessary, it would most likely be arthroscopic keyhole surgery, which typically requires 4 to 6 weeks for a return to play. In the worst case, recovery could extend to around 10 weeks. So if the worst case with this Kai Havertz injury is 10 weeks, are you seriously telling me that happens and Arsenal go, right, we're going to make our most expensive signing of the summer on a player that doesn't even really play in Kai Havertz's position to cover him for the next 10 weeks? When in that 10 weeks, worst case 10 weeks, when in that 10 weeks, there are 3 international breaks. I just don't buy it. I simply don't buy that Eze is a direct response to Kai Havertz. I think the Havertz injury made Arsenal go, right, we have to make sure we get this done now. I think in reality, previously, we were probably hoping that some sales could have been made. But that's kind of where I'm at on that. Then we look at where will he play. And again, there's been a lot of noise about this. Oh, well, he's a 10. He's not really a left winger. How does it fit? Arteta's not going to drop Ødegaard. So why have they really done it? Noise. That is noise. It's noise from people that don't necessarily know what's going on. Now, I'm going to start with this, actually, which was an interesting quote from today from Mikel Arteta. He was asked, a few weeks ago, you mentioned evolution. And when you did, you spoke about creating spaces inside. When you were thinking about how the team could evolve, how big was it? How big was that in what you were looking for this season? So this ability to create spaces inside. And he replied with, well, there were a few things that I won't express here. Obviously, tactically, doesn't want to give away state secrets. But he said, with that evolution, make sure that when we are evolving, we are maintaining the great things that we do and just tweaking things that can give us big value, not spending too much time on them. That is what we've done, and that is what we will continue to do, and you will see them. But the evolution comes from the individuals at the end. It's about putting those players with their qualities in those positions as often as possible to express their qualities. What he is saying is, in terms of this evolution and spaces on the inside, it's about the ability of the player in those spaces. And so this idea that we're going to bring Eze in and then just put him in a position that really doesn't suit him, I don't buy it. I don't buy that Mikel Arteta and his team have gone and bought Eze for 60-odd million with the intention of removing him from the positions where he thrives. They aren't stupid, fundamentally. And actually, if you look at Eze as a player, that argument doesn't make a huge amount of sense anyway. This idea that he's a 10, he's an out-and-out 10, and he can't play on the left, it just doesn't really make sense. Yes, for Crystal Palace, he has predominantly played as an attacking midfielder. Throughout his career, he's played over 80 games as either a left midfielder or a left winger, and he has always been left side biased. And if you actually look at how that works for Crystal Palace, he plays on the left. You know, people say Eze is a 10 as if he is someone that sits centrally behind a striker or behind two strikers. Like, you know, that's not the way that Eze plays. It's not the way that Crystal Palace play because they have two 10s, right? It's Eze and it's Sarr. Previously, it was Elise. They play with two wide 10s. And you can see this. This is the pitch going from left on your screen to right on your screen. And so at the top of it, there is the left-hand side of the pitch. And that is where Eze has the majority of his open play touches. And you can actually sort of follow the numbers and the percentages. Around the halfway line, he's most comfortable picking up the ball wide, and then as he comes forward through the pitch, he tends to come centrally. So that's kind of exactly what we're looking at here. We're looking at someone who can drop out wide to receive the ball, but then when he's going to carry it, he is going to want to head into to central positions. And so what you're looking for really is then who's going to occupy the sort of top right-hand corner of that map, where it drops down to 7% and then 3% in the corner. Who's going to occupy that? Well, that is fundamentally, hopefully, where our left back is going to be. And that is what will hopefully allow him to thrive. But again, you look at this, Eze dribbles. It's the same thing. He is a wide left player who, as he approaches the box, drifts centrally. And that is what we kind of want him to be. I do think that that is the reason that we're bringing him in. And again, if you're talking about whether or not he's a winger, well, this is Ismaila Sarr, who does the exact same job, but on the right-hand side for Crystal Palace. And he is a winger. He has always been a winger. He is a right winger by trade who is now playing as a 10. And that kind of shows you and demonstrates that that position within that Palace team kind of operates best when the player is a winger. So this idea, the two ideas, one, that Eze cannot play on the left is nonsense. And two, that Eze is a 10, a central 10, is nonsense. So then the question is, well, will he be allowed to do that for Arsenal? Is that what we're going to allow him to do? Or are we going to make him play as a touchline winger, as we often have with Martinelli? I would actually say, by the way, if you watch Arsenal over the last 3, 4, 5 months, end of last season, start of this season, Martinelli hasn't been forced out onto the touchline that whole time. He just happens to struggle when he needs to drive more centrally. But the best example I can give is that Arteta has not always relied on a left winger, a touchline left winger. At his best, when Emile Smith-Rowe was at his best, he was on the left. He was the most left-sided player that we had. But he's not a touchline left winger. That's not the way that he played. And this was a great example. We beat Brentford. I think it was the penultimate goal that he ever scored for us. But he picks the ball up here, right? Now, you could very happily see Eze picking the ball up here. And the Arsenal player on the far right of that picture is Kieran Tierney, an overlapping fullback. And what happens from here, and I'm sure many of you remember the goal, is that as Smith-Rowe carries it towards the box, Kieran Tierney bombs down the left-hand side, and it enables Emile Smith-Rowe to run in, cut in, and score. It was a wonderful goal. But the point is, can we have someone doing what Kieran Tierney did? And the answer is Ricardo Calafiori. Ricardo Calafiori, and we saw it against Manchester United even, but Ricardo Calafiori is more than happy to make these runs again and again and again. He loves it, in fact. He loves gallivanting. And so we're looking at partnerships, I think, on the field. We're looking at Calafiori and Eze combining together to make a great partnership. And Arteta has seen this, and he's seen it work in the past. So I have no doubt that this is more like what it will look like with Eze starting off the left-hand side. Is it possible that he plays centrally, properly centrally? You're talking playing instead of Ødegaard. 100% in certain games, and we'll talk about that in a second. But the point is, playing as this kind of left-sided attacker, which is what I would say more than as a 10, I'd call it a left-sided attacker. That is where Eze has kicked on over the last 3 years. And if he can replicate these sorts of numbers, 26 goal contributions in 43 last year, 17 in 31 the season before, that is an excellent signing for us to have made. It's an excellent contribution. And that's in a Palace team. You would hope that he can increase that in an Arsenal team. And I also look at, the combination of him and Victor Gyökeres. Gyökeres has many similar traits to Mateta. So I think it's really exciting. And I think it adds to the depth and it adds to the options that we've got. Now, another interesting thing that I saw was this from Mike Keegan about the way that we've done business this summer. He said, rather than focusing on three groups, starters, backups, and prospects, Arsenal's emphasis has been on making groups 1 and 2 almost indistinguishable from each other. Basically, starters and backups are just talents, right? The aim is to ensure that there are no backups, only a larger pool of starters. And the reason I find that interesting is because if you start looking at this, and apologies if it's slightly too small for you to actually see the names of the players here, but these are all Arsenal players. So you've got an entire starting 11 of red dots, an entire starting 11 of yellow dots, and then you've got those green dots, which are, I mean, they look like subs, but they're not. That's effectively players 23 to 29, which really does show you that sales at this point are necessary. But the point is, in every position here, if you're talking depth, you've got Raya and Kepa, White and Timber, Saliba Mosquera, Gabriel Kivior, Calafiori Miles Lewis-Skelly, Zubamendi Norgard, Nwaneri Erdegaard, Marino Rice, Madueke Saka, Havertz Gyökeres, Eze Martinelli. That's exceptional depth. Exceptional depth. And then the seven that you've got then down on the bench there, Reece Nelson, Max Dowman, Trossard, Jesus, Sambi Lokonga, Vieira, Zinchenko. I mean, with Dowman coming through, Trossard on a new contract, Jesus to come back from injury, it's remarkable amount of depth, actually, if you think about it. And the thing that I really like, is that within this, I see solutions. I see so many solutions. I look at Miles Lewis-Skelly, who matches up with Martinelli and Madueke, right? So as a combination, Miles Lewis-Skelly coming inside, where Madueke actually in particular, can be that touchline winger, can get to the byline, pull a ball back, but you've got Miles Lewis-Skelly more centrally providing an option. But then you've got Calafiori and Eze. Different combination, completely different style, different solutions. Again, Eze could play centrally. You could play, in certain games, Zubamendi and Rice as a double pivot with Eze ahead of them centrally, and then play much more of an attacking front four. What I like is the options. What I think we have now are solutions. And in Eze, you've got a versatile player that can simply unlock games, and when we get into those situations that we've seen time and time again, where we basically end up in the horseshoe, right? We end up in the horseshoe. We can't access that central zone. Eze gets in there. Eze gets into that central area, in and around the edge of their box, can receive the ball, turn, shoot. It's just something very, very different to what we currently have in the squad. And I find that exciting. In terms of whether or not that makes us complete, I think we're the closest we've ever been. I would certainly say that. I think we're the closest we've ever been. I think if you go back to that graphic that showed the two players in every position, where none of them are real weaknesses, none of them, if they came in, you'd be like, oh God, this is really stressful. I think that speaks volumes. I actually went back, interestingly, to a video I made at the very start of the summer, my dream squad going into 25-26. And I have to say, it's fairly impressive what we've done, because this was the dream squad that I had, and we're not far away from it. Okay, Garcia at the time, Joan Garcia, that ended up being Kepa. Not the end of the world. Defenders, I didn't think we would make any defensive sales or signings. In reality, we've gone from Tomiyasu to Mosquera. I think that's a massive upgrade for very little money. Into the midfield, wanted Zubamendi, of course. We kind of knew that was happening. Zubamendi comes in. Turns out, Norgard has come in for Thomas Partey as well. Obviously, that situation aside, I don't mind that whatsoever. And then you've got the attack. And I wanted Rodrigo, Gyökeres, and Mbuemo. We've ended up with Eze, Gyökeres, and Madueke. I really don't think we're too far apart. Okay, I love Rodrigo. And look, if we could somehow pull off a loan of Rodrigo and sell Martinelli, for example, at the end of this window, that would be absolutely phenomenal. But ultimately, we're really not far away from that squad. And everything I loved about that squad and how balanced I thought that squad was. And one of the only, actually, I'm just thinking back now to that video, one of the only weaknesses I remember saying in that squad was in the midfield. I didn't feel like we had another defensive screen like Declan Rice. And actually, I think Norgard is that. So, yeah, ultimately, I do think that, look, there are no guarantees in football. Saying that I think we are as complete as we've been at any point does not mean that we absolutely are guaranteed to win anything, because that's not how it works. Liverpool have an exceptional squad. City have a great squad with the world's best manager. Chelsea have an improving squad. But I do really think we're in a good place. And I really do think Eze adds a huge amount. And that's aside from, the immediate thing he adds, I think, which is energy. The way that has revitalized the fan base after a great win against United, but a performance that people were a bit concerned about. The Havertz injury comes out, the Trossard contract news comes out, and where we've ended up now, I just think is really exciting. So, look, if you've enjoyed the video, please do like, please do subscribe. I really enjoy making these, and it's going to be a very big season on this channel. Other than that, we've got Leeds United tomorrow. Fingers crossed, no slip-ups in that game. Of course, other teams, Liverpool, tough game against Newcastle. City, tough game against Spurs, could be dropping points. And it should be a great weekend of football, and there will be more content on the channel. But until then, have a great evening, a great weekend, and I'll catch you on the next one. Goodbye.